why am I here? Why am I here making these videos, doing what I do? Why do I not care about production, consistency, things like that? I want to give you information that hopefully leads you down a rabbit hole into the information I say and bring some abstractions from the way I live my life and the proximity of which I live my life to contemporary society. That's a big statement on this channel, that I'm here to talk about society and the death of the human spirit. So I wanted to have this conversation today about culture wars in this kind of new format where it's just all like, it's just voice. You can put this on in the background. You can listen to it. You don't have to worry about what's going on screen. There's no stimulation. There's nothing other than the information. And I'm going to bring a lot of information, and we're just going to label this something simple because all the words and the thumbnails, they don't really get the point across, I don't think. And I've been shadow banned. I'm fairly positive I've been shadow banned. So if you want to comment, share it around, that's totally cool. I respect that, and I appreciate it. But I want you guys to think about these things that I say today, because we're going to jump right into it and go into this new culture war on the right about Cracker Barrel and this sterilization of everything, that's coming through. There's a lot of sterilization of things, nowadays. If we talk about the new Tony Hawk 3 and 4, if you pay attention to video games, I wouldn't play it if it was good. I'll be real with you. But this new AI sterilization, everything's so cool, and they're like, wow, we really did something cool by honoring the legacy of Tony Hawk by including Taco Bell 2 times in the storyline on College and Airport. Guys, I pay attention to that stuff. It's just all like, the whole marketing push was, we're going to include Taco Bell because that is our roots. We need to show our solidarity with Taco Bell. And now we have Cracker Barrel, and they're being sterilized too. Everything nowadays is black and gray and white. You go to a renovated home, it's black, gray, and white. It's the ugliest thing ever. The modern consumer latches on to this anti-aesthetic because it's so neutral. They love neutrality. Okay, that's what Cracker Barrel's doing now. I would never step foot in a Cracker Barrel, especially now. But prior to that, we'll get into some more conversation points. But the sterilization of culture is a very modern and current thing. Everyone just loves the lack of aesthetic, and they love the death of atmosphere. Atmosphere is not an important thing when it comes to these people. They want to see everything dead. They want to see the nature outside their house is dead. They want to spray it with the harshest chemicals to make sure that everything that could come into their house is dead. And I'm going to tell you this right now. It's looking grim. If things continue on the way they're doing now, we can see a total collapse of human society in, I'd say, about 10 years. And that's a really probably prophetic comment. It's very dark. It's very depressing. We have to consider this too, that the lawn care industry is a part of our eventual collapse and demise. If things don't change and the climate continues the way it does, 10 years is a very liberal estimate. It's 10 years or less, to be completely fair with you. That's just kind of drawing it out. But 10 years, we could see mass death. We can see the end of civilization as we know it. And things are getting bad, guys. Things are getting bad. This, sterilization of everything good. And, the culture, the climate, the bugs outside your house, all of that, is being sterilized. And yeah, that's a big point. Bring those all together, and you can kind of see where I'm coming. There's another thing I touched upon it a little bit just a few minutes ago. What we are looking at right now is the fast food and restaurant industry, another thing that brings out the worst in everybody. The fast food industry and the restaurant industry, they cut corners and they feed you poison. All the food they serve you is poison and so much worse for you than anything you buy in a store. You can buy something super unhealthy in a store every now and then. Who cares? You know what I mean? I have those apps where you can kind of like check the ingredients to see what you're eating. I don't really care every now and then if I'm like eating something really poorly rated and it's got, additives and ingredients. I'll be real with you. I've never felt as sick, consistently as when I was eating fast food every day. I think that the fast food industry and the restaurant industry, they're very like death of the human spirit kind of thing. And this kind of like fascination and fixation with convenience and everything being handed to you, and everything being super easy, I think is bad. I think it's very bad. I think it's one of those corruptions that kind of exists within the modern society. It's one of those corruptions that kind of like push this, I don't know, but convenience is the death of the human spirit. Convenience, when you give everything up, that's like one of those like all-encompassing things that like everything that we have wrong with our society is because people are too comfortable, and they kind of like lie to themselves and they do all of this stuff. They continue on the path they're going, and they're like violent about preserving this comfort. If it wasn't for that, love of comfort and this like sloth, greed, it's like this laziness that's like persistent within our society. If it wasn't for that, people would actually like fight for what they believe in. But like nowadays, you can't really have like a spine, or like you can't have skin in any game, because if you do that, then you have to like challenge somebody else. And challenging somebody else is so uncomfortable. Why would you do that? You don't want to do that. You don't want to challenge things. You don't want to challenge other people. You want to be comfortable and be friends with everybody. And I definitely alienate some of my friends because they don't like to say certain things. If I mention, just casually something that, they don't want to have a strong opinion on, they'll change the subject real quick because they don't want to be confrontational. They're afraid if they get caught out and you get a little too comfortable with them, you go talk to one of their friends. And sometimes I feel like you have to be very careful too, because of these people who operate, and you have an opinion and you want to say like, hey, this is pretty dire, this is pretty important. You post on social media that you don't agree with what Israel's doing in Palestine. You don't agree with them, doing all of the things that they're doing. I have this feeling that some of these people, who might be considered your friends, might have some connections to open Zionists, and these open Zionists might have a brief introduction to your character. So you got to be kind of careful too, there. And it's just all like, make sure that you're regularly vetting your friends and the people who are close to you, because you never know what kind of information that's being spread around about you or your character. And yeah, that really rings true with everything, right? I have so many things in my life going on always. If I say a statement, it always applies to everything else, which is crazy. But it's okay. We just know a lot of people. I know a lot of people, and I try to be as opinionated as possible. If you really don't like me or what I stand for, I think that you should confront that in yourself first and foremost, because the projection that you're putting onto me isn't necessarily my place to deconstruct. And that's an important thing to remember with the right and the conservatives. While I disagree with like everything that they represent and I'm becoming more and more openly vitriolic to the ideas and the history of what has been going on in politics and in the aristocratic class. We all know what's going on. You know what I mean? We all know what's going on up there at the top when you have money. We all know what's going on over in Israel. When Roman Polanski is over there, and people just go over there to hide from the federal agents, because it's a little different over here in America, right? But it's not different for the aristocratic class, because they all operate under one single banner, and it's not an American banner. Donald Trump is not an American. He has his allegiance elsewhere. Same with all the politicians. We all know this. We can't get too deep into this conversation, but yeah, it's a very important thing to consider, right? Anyway, with all of those things talked upon, what else can we really discuss? We have the sterilization, the lawn care industry, all this cultural analysis. Cultural analysis is very important, guys. Remember that. I think in the past I've talked about how the Black Panther movement was one of the most important movements in revolutionary circles. I think that there's a reason that they killed the Black Panthers and they didn't kill the postmodernists. I think there's a strong reason why the boots on the ground community types are the first ones targeted, other than like the intellectuals who gatekeep and like alienate. And it's all about alienation. If you look into the core values of the movement, what you have to really pay attention to is how they alienate the individual, And personally, I don't think that I could be too much of a problem for the federal agents, because I'm like a Dale Gribble type, you know what I mean? Like, I'm over here, I'm a reclusive. I like this radio type analysis, just conversations off the cuff. I am a big alienator, and I'm not. I feel like I have reactionary tendencies, I'm trying to kill that fascist in my mind, but yeah, I'm working on it heavy. Sometimes I really feel quite aligned with like someone like Vosh. Not necessarily like everything, but like the general momentum of like the statements that need to be said. And I really want to say it like with my full conviction that like everything that I'm trying to say has some kind of value or meaning. And I think that we should all consider some of these things like on a deep level, Like, not everything's going to be super comfortable to talk about, and some things that aren't necessarily popular now, you can't count on them not being popular in like 2 to 3 years. And I genuinely hope with my full heart that like the climate activism picks up, because that's like the super important one, right? The insect population, the evils of the lawn care industry, that's a big one we have to consider. I think the lawn care industry is like the biggest detriment, that like people just like want to keep busy, so what they'll do is just kill off the planet in any way they can, and then they'll kind of gaslight you, and because like this is a philosophy that they've stuck to their whole life. And I think that they should just feel fear. I think that they should not live comfortably, and they should not feel like they have the power to speak up. Sometimes I really like the authoritarian kind of movements, because there's a lot of people you won't be able to control with anarchy. There'll always be agents of chaos who exist. I know people really like their anarchism, but you can't fix people in this indirect way. It's just like you have to kind of put a boot down, because the way that you're gonna like the way that you're gonna fix your society and the way that you're gonna fix your people is you're gonna make sure that some of these people just don't feel comfortable and they don't feel safe saying what they feel, because they'll never change their minds, and you can't fight them on that. You can't tell a Republican about how Donald Trump was affiliated with Jeffrey Epstein. You can't tell them that. You can't tell a Republican that Jeffrey Epstein was an agent of Mossad. You can't say this kind of thing, just like it is a very like difficult thing to communicate. 1 second. Like if you sit here and you consider it, right? Like having this conversation with Republicans and conservatives that they don't really have any like integrity about anything really, and it's all aesthetic and it's all cult. The cult of the golden calf, like I've said before, it's a very biblical thing what we're going through right now, and this is utterly I don't like using this word, but towards evil, you know what I mean? You can kind of like pull your own abstraction out of it, but I think that like what Donald Trump is doing and his camp is doing is like inherently demonic. If there is a hell, he will see it. I don't want to get into the nuances of why I believe in that sort of thing. I think that it's like totally off topic. Just agree to disagree. If there is a hell, Donald Trump deserves it. If there's an eternity of suffering, Donald Trump deserves it. Same with Miller, Musk, Vance, even Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, all of these people who sold their souls. Like me personally, I could rebrand myself to a conservative and have like the most loyal audience, and like they would eat this shit up. But I'm not gonna sell my soul like that, because I have morals and I have like people who like are important to me and like loved ones, and I have a mother and a grandmother, and like I couldn't like even begin to like think about like taking away rights from women and the elderly and the queer, and just that is so important to me. I don't think the marginalized should have to suffer more because people are comfortable making money. Money is an inherent evil, by the way. I don't like holding on to money. I don't like having money. There's just something like so evil about its presence, because I know that like it was made off of the backs of others, and I think that the economy should collapse, and I don't know what else. We really have to reconsider all of this, and we have to build something new, because everything now is a byproduct of you'd have to consider slavery, murder, and all of this stuff is sacrificial. You know what I mean? This all has killed somebody in the process of being made. And then we have plastics everywhere. Microplastic is in your brain, forever chemicals are in your bloodstream. There's no escape from the capitalist beast that's eating us all from the inside. That all of this is like a Greek tragedy, it's just like we're all being sacrificed to a god that is profit. There was a really good video I watched a while ago. It's abstraction. You have to consider it like that. It's an abstraction onto this kind of like idea that like capital is, reliant on sacrifice. It runs off of the blood and the life force of humanity. And the video is called "Oil is Sentient." That oil is a sentient creature that requires blood sacrifice to, exist. It kind of reads off as like this like creepypasta, you know what I mean? But like it's so brilliant in the nuance, because it builds to something greater. It's like a fictional, whatever. Everything fictional is an abstraction, right? We can't look at everything objectively and say everything needs to represent something objectively true. It can be objectively true, but not objectively true. Some things are reflections abstractly on something that is objectively true that you can, cross-reference and kind of take your own meaning out of it. But for this oil being sentient creates this creature that just needs blood sacrifice to exist. And it like controls the minds of humanity, right? It controls the minds of all of us living. For profit incentive, we need to sacrifice to this greater God, this greater being that wants us all dead. All of this accelerationist race to the finish. Apocalypse. We really have to consider that the conservatives represent apocalypse. They are the final frontier of human comfort when everything is sacrificed and everything goes away. Then they all go into their doomsday bunkers and they kill us all. So remember that. I've also been thinking about social media lately. It is inherently demonic as well. That word again. It's so evil, guys. It's so evil. I don't know how to get out of it. I have Signal. I have Telegram. I want to do something far more held back. I might have like a podcast or something for my own personal recollections. But it's important to remember the things we're fighting for and the people we're fighting for. Don't be a racist. Don't be a transphobe. Don't be a bigot. Don't be anti-Semitic. That's a big one that people need to remember. Israel's bad, but anti-Semitism's bad as well. You can't blame the Jews for what Israel's doing when they were founded by a bunch of atheists and they were asking for God's divine, whatever. It's just Israel, in my opinion, is an atheist nation, and they don't represent the good or the karmic good of the universe. I think that they're a total rejection of the Jewish. I think that what they're doing is they're scapegoating you guys. Don't align your Jewish identity with Israel, because what they're doing, it's like really important to remember. What they're doing is they're setting you up for failure. They're making everyone hate you, and you will be the one they throw under the bus. You got to remember that.